My name is Henry Harris. Thank you for watching. We will get into session 9, chapter 9 of my book called Facing Our Wounds. And I would like to encourage you, if you haven't ordered my book, you can go to Amazon right now and order my book, Facing Our Wounds. I promise you it will be very beneficial to you. Everyone that I've talked to said they've been inspired and touched in some way in regards to my book, and I'm so glad that I can contribute that or add that to your life. After all, that is my ultimate goal, is to help people to heal, to talk about things, to have a conversation, and that's something that we rarely ever see these days. But today we're going to talk about chapter 9, which is the prison of shame and guilt. You know, when I wrote this chapter, the prison of shame and guilt, what came to my mind was a prison. And I was like, how is prison associated with trauma or pain? But you'll find out it very much is, because when you go through trauma and when you go through pain, you know, the different trials and things we go through in life, it makes you feel confined. It makes you feel trapped. But there is freedom in that. So as always, I'll read a portion of each chapter and kind of get you into the mind of the author and why I wrote it and whatnot. And this is what I wrote. As I mentioned before, you feel guilty when you did something wrong, but shame is when you feel your whole self is wrong. When you do something wrong, you first feel guilt and then shame. You have to realize that shame is accompanied by guilt. When you do something wrong, what happens? No matter if that's small, well, what you did was wrong, no matter if that was small or if it was big. When you do something wrong, you don't feel shame about it first, you feel guilt. And then after you feel guilty about it, what happens? Then shame comes along. Just because you inflicted pain on yourself or did something doesn't mean that your whole self is bad. This has a lot to do with your identity as well, because if you are unaware of who you are, you may allow whatever you did to define you and make you feel as if you are the very thing that you did, which is shame. In so many ways, guilt says, this is what I did, but shame says, this is who I am. And I'm here to tell you that that is a lie. So when guilt and shame are connected together, it imprisons you, it confines you. It will try to convince you that your whole self and who you are and your identity, you are the very thing that you did, and that your whole self is bad, and that you're irredeemable, that you're beyond help, that you're beyond hope. And we know that that is not true. Guilt says, this is what I did, but shame says, this is who I am. I am not what I did, and I want to tell you today that neither are you. As a human being, we all will make mistakes in life. I can't tell you how many people who have read this book and say, Henry, thank you for helping me to liberate myself from thinking that, you know, I'm somehow defined by my mistakes or by my failures. I'm not. I'm not the things that I did. I admit it, it happened, but it's history. Don't allow the things that happen to you to imprison you or to bring you down or to give you somehow false hope. There is hope for you. As a human, I will fail, but I am not my mistakes, and neither are you. You may feel inadequate and worthless, all because you fail, but own your imperfections. Make the necessary corrections and move on with your life. You may fall, but your story is not about how you fell. It is about rising from the fall. See, many of us, when we fall, we have even allowed that to become our identity. I failed, I messed up, I went through divorce. Okay, we get that. Now tell us, how did you get back up? And that's what Facing Our Wounds talks about. It's not just about trauma. It's about rising from the trauma. It's about rising from the pain. It's about releasing myself from the prison of guilt and shame that has kept me hostage for all these years. And now I'm free. Now I'm liberated. That's what freedom is liberation. I'm free. I'm free to talk about it. What is the purpose of a prison? Prison is a place of confinement. You are locked up behind bars and chains with very little to, if any, freedom at all. Imagine for a second allowing shame and guilt to dominate your life. You are in confinement to what happened to you or what you did to yourself. You are locked up in the mentality that your whole identity is defined by your imperfections and wrongdoing. Shame and guilt are also associated with darkness, and you cannot see in the dark. That's what prison is. I use the analogy of a natural prison. You're locked up, you're bound up. You can do some things in prison, but for the most part, you really can't because you're locked up, you're bound up, you're chained up. Well, use that same perspective as it relates to your trauma. Many of you have allowed your trauma to do that, to keep you locked up, to keep you chained up, to keep you in prison, not only in your mind, but in your heart and in your spirit. You are in prison, you are in confinement, and shame and guilt is associated with darkness, and darkness will always interfere with your ability not to see anything. You can't see in the dark. When you are in prison, it is a dark place. It is a very uncomfortable place. And you can't see, you can't navigate through the dark. You can't navigate through the pain. You know why? Because you're in prison. And today I want to tell you that you can be free from the prison of guilt and shame no matter what you've done. I'm here to tell you that you are not your shame. You are not your guilt. You're not what happened to you, and neither is that your identity. Thank you for watching. I'd like to encourage you once again to visit Amazon.com and get your copy of Facing Our Wounds. In the next segment, which will be our last session, which is session 10, chapter 10, we're going to talk about the beauty of brokenness.